Next, let's talk about David Castillo on the Kansas State basketball breakdown here, breaking down the men's basketball team. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Locked On Kansas State, bringing you Kansas State Wildcats coverage like no one else. But as you remember, last year, David Castillo joined the Kansas State Wildcats crew as a true freshman, the lone true freshman on the roster. He arrived with high expectations. He had a decorated prep career, if you will, and it was set to be a key contributor as the team was getting ready to make that next step. It really didn't happen, but maybe he will do that again this season. There has been some reports from some really interesting media people. CBS Sports' John Rothstein has his eyes on several rising stars across the Big 12, and one of them that he brought up was Kansas State's David Castillo. According to Heartland College Sports, our good old friend at Joe Tillery, he said Kansas State's David Castillo might be the most intriguing of the bunch. The former four-star recruit showed flashes of his elite scoring ability in limited minutes as a freshman, but with another year in Jerome Tang's program, Castillo looks poised to become one of the league's best next big-time guards. His natural scoring instincts and playmaking potential could make him a focal point for the Wildcats offense moving forward. That'll be a big question because he's one of only a few players that are returning for Kansas State this season. And if you remember, when the team was eliminated last year from Big 12 tournament, they asked David Castillo right in the locker room if he was planning on returning or hitting the portal, and he said he had no doubt in his mind he was coming back to Manhattan. So one thing is true, that he is dedicated and committed to this program. That's something that should keep you excited. I know that definitely wasn't the case for a lot of the other players that hit the portal, and retention was a huge concern and question mark for Kansas State this past offseason, but not with David Castillo. He's a 6'1" guard. Remember, he's coming from Bartlesville, Oklahoma. He was the all-time leading scorer at Bartlesville High School. He had almost 1,600 points, averaging 24 points per game. They're hoping that they can get to that level, at least very close to Kansas State. He's a two-time gold medalist in USA basketball for 16 and 17U in international competition. And before he got to Kansas State, he transferred from his senior season to a prep school called Sunrise Christian Academy in Kansas to get him ready for college competition. Four-star recruit by many places like 24/7 Sports, as sometimes as high as number 45 nationally, coming to Kansas State this past season. But last year, it wasn't impressive. There was a lot of excitement at times, thinking that he could be that next guard because of the issues that were going on potentially behind the scenes with Doug McDaniel, especially in non-conference play when Doug McDaniel wasn't getting the starting jobs. David Castillo had a couple times where he got the start, but he played in 32 games. He only averaged 10 minutes per game. He shot really a pretty tough 22% from the field, including 25% from three-point land. That was probably the toughest thing because I thought he was going to be one of those three-point shooters. At least they tried to make him out to be early in his collegiate career, and he only averaged 2.4 points per game. I think his best game of the season, I think he scored 17 points against UAPB where they won in the Big 12 Big East battle. That's not what that is. But they won against UAPB on the game in that one. But ever since arriving in Manhattan, Castillo's always been described by his coaches and his teammates as an uncommonly mature type of player and vocal leader for a freshman from last season, and of course moving into that new role as a sophomore. Coach Tang at one point did note that Castillo is not your average freshman, and he doesn't approach the game as a freshman. He had a lot of hype heading into the season last year. His skill set was diverse. Castillo himself stated he can bring shooting, dribbling, passing, defense, everything to the game, and I think he still can. I just don't think that the team was set great for him last year. I think it's going to be a better fit for him now with the new offensive schemes brought by Matthew Driscoll. It just wonders how much time he's going to get, how much more minutes than the 10 that he was already getting with all these new transfers do we see David Castillo get into that. He's got great free throw accuracy, 88% free throw percentage with his touch, including 8 for 9 for his start. And not many free throws, but he did have a good start to that thing. Work ethic, of course, is something that is really good. But of course, on the court, you have to find a way to have shooting consistency. Early in his college career, struggled to find that offensive consistency and pace. Coach Tang has mentioned a few times this past offseason and during the season this year that his relative inexperience, if you will, can sometimes prevent him from being able to slow the game down. So ever since he's been committed to Kansas State, he committed back in April of 2023, and he signed in November of that year. His decision strongly was influenced by Jerome Tang and the coaching staff. Remember when they asked him why Kansas State, he said the coaching staff and the environment. He said Manhattan reminds me a lot back home, so coming here was kind of another home feeling. He added the coaching staff of role models who helped him build his confidence, and it doesn't help probably moving from that Kansas prep school to keep him in that area. Coach Jerome Tang, on his potential moving into potentially a bigger role this season, said he's going to be an all-conference guard at some point in his career. I think Jerome Tang has a lot of belief in David Castillo. Tang views Castillo as a high potential player, labeling him as a dude, if you will. And if you know Jerome Tang, that's not a word that he usually uses very lightly. It's a term of endearment, of course, but he previously used it for All-Americans, Marquise Noel, and for Keontae Johnson as well. So Tang advises him to continue working while he's waiting for consistent playing time. We'll see if that's the same way this season with guys like Marcus Johnson, Nate Johnson, PJ Haggerty, Abdi Bashir, which we're going to get to on these breakdowns, if he can get in there. And he's noted that just an injury to a teammate is all that separates him from consistently playing 25 minutes a night. Of course, that'd be a huge jump from the 10 minutes he had this past season. So it should be an interesting year for David Castillo. I think he has the potential to make a breakout if he gets the minutes. I have a feeling that he's working really hard. There has been some reports that have been surrounding through some message boards across Kansas State message boards that David Castillo, some of the vibes around him are that he hasn't had the quote light bulb moment yet for him. So maybe that means that just needs to happen during the season. Maybe that happens in non-conference play. But overall, I can see David Castillo having an impactful season for Kansas State. I think he finds a way to have more than 10 minutes. I don't think he gets buried on this roster, although I think this roster is more talented than last year. I also think David Castillo is more talented. So bank me in for about 14 minutes per game for David Castillo. More if he can find his shooting arc and continue to raise that. Less if, of course, that shooting it becomes still an issue. He can't shoot 20-something% from the field and expect to get more than 10 minutes per game, especially if he's not helping in the facilitation department and maybe on the defensive side for being a somewhat smaller guard on the court. So it all depends on his shooting. I think that he, of course, have worked on that over the offseason. He's a hard worker. His work ethic has been something they've talked about for quite a long time. So consider me on the David Castillo train moving forward this season. If I had to put a prediction, I'm going 14 minutes per game, and I'm going up to 7 points per game for David Castillo. That would be a huge jump forward, but I think he can do it if they give him the opportunity.